Dark Souls holds a collection of pretty strange items, and a really good example would be rubbish. Looking closely at its inventory item, it appears to be nothing more than what looks like rubbish. The closest physical description I can provide for this item is a crumpled mass of dirt and cotton. It is impossible to really determine what it actually is or once was. Even the item description does not provide much of a clue. Rubbish has no value. Who in their right mind would bother carrying this around? Perhaps you need help. Honestly, the only reason this is in the game is definitely as a joke. Yet since it's from software, there is a hidden mechanic associated even with this item. If carried back to the Undead Asylum, it can be traded with Snuggly the Crow for a Titanite chunk, a highly valuable upgrade material. Honestly, I find this to be very funny, as why would Snuggly really trade a piece of rubbish for a Titanite chunk? Alternatively, it can be fed to King Seeker Frant for a return of exactly 1 soul. This interaction is equally absurd as the primordial serpent willingly consumes the rubbish, only to reward the player with exactly 1 single soul. The Dung Pile being on this list is not even a surprise, as guess what? It is a literal pile of shit. Out of all the mythical artifacts, the legendary swords, the magical rings From Software could have coded into the game, they went out of their way to let you through a pile of shit. And guess what it does? Poison you and your enemy at the same time. Pretty useless, I would say. Because of this shared damage, the only real reason to use it is pure disrespect. Players mostly just use it to mock people in PvP, either tossing it mid-fight or dropping it right on the spot where the opponent died. The lore regarding who actually carries this item is even funnier. You can farm them from the infested barbarians down in Blighttown, which checks out, but you can also just buy them. Both the undead female merchant and Hawkeye Goth will gladly sell you their shit for 200 souls apiece. Huh. Why is there a set market price for shit? They simply do not give a damn that they are walking around covered in their own filth, to the point where they actually view it as valid merchandise. Ultimately, there is exactly one good thing about the Dung Pie. If you carry this atrocious waste material all the way back to the Undead Asylum, you can drop it in Snuggly the Crow's nest. In exchange for a piece of literal shit, the bird will hand you a Demon Titanite, one of the rarest upgrade materials in the entire game. Another bizarre artifact is definitely the Peculiar Doll. The only reason this triggers my curiosity is the fact the location we find this item in is rather peculiar. The game begins inside a locked cell in the Northern Undead Asylum. Initially, this cell is entirely empty. However, if the player discovers a way to return to the asylum later in their journey, they will find the Peculiar Doll resting exactly in that starting cell. Furthermore, this seemingly harmless toy is now heavily guarded by a Black Knight, an elite soldier who was entirely absent during the tutorial sequence. Examining the visual design, we see a doll that depicts a girl standing with crossed legs. The formal in-game text states, "A strange doll in a strange dress. There once was an abomination who had no place in this world. She clutched this doll tightly and eventually was drawn into a cold and lonely painted world." The abomination mentioned here is none other than crossbreed Priscilla. The presence of this item in the starting area directly implies that, before the creation of the painted world, the asylum was Priscilla's home. But the question that really stuck to me is, why is this doll now in a cell, which was not there before when we started the game? From a more mechanical standpoint, it would have made sense to hide the access of the painting behind this hidden item that can only be obtained by returning to the starting cell of the chosen undead. But why exactly this cell? Something else to point out is the Black Knight that guards the cell. Black Knights are supposed to be purpose-driven. It might even be possible that someone from the royal family might have dispatched this Black Knight to the asylum specifically to secure the doll. By locking it in the deepest, most secure cell available and standing guard outside, the knight was attempting to ensure no one could ever access the painted world. But this is just an assumption, and I might be completely incorrect. The gods of Anorlando feared Priscilla and her inherent power. It is highly probable they imbued this doll with magic to act as a lure, forcefully pulling whoever held it into the canvas. The doll serves as the mechanical key to the painted world of Ariamis. However, why the doll was left behind in the asylum and why a Black Knight now stands guard over an empty cell remains a quiet, unsolved mystery. The copper coin also offers some strange anomalies. In any other game, or even in real life, coins, or rather money, is a vital means for survival. But in Lordran, traditional wealth is entirely meaningless. Even the in-game description highlights this stark reality. Coin made of copper. Its face shows Old Man McLoif, god of medicine and drink. Even coins of great value in the world often have little value in Lordran, where the accepted currency is souls. Those who dream of returning to the absolute world are fond of carrying these around. So if the item can't be used for anything else, then it is technically a useless relic. The method of obtaining this item is far more significant than the object itself. It is handed directly to the player by Petrus of Thorland upon arriving at Filing's shrine. When spoken to, Petrus offers the coin with a very specific line of dialogue, stating that he wishes to express my good faith. He deliberately frames the exchange as an act of charity and camaraderie from a humble cleric. But it's strange, as whatever he gives you, even in good faith, is a rather useless item. The copper coin perfectly mirrors who Petrus really is. On the surface, a coin implies value, just as his holy robes imply virtue. But in Lordran, both are completely empty. He hands you this item as a quick way to buy your trust. It is a cheap trick designed to hide his deep cowardice, masking the fact that he will eventually abandon Rhea of Thorland to die in the dark. Its only real mechanical purpose in the entire game is to be fed to the Kingseeker Framt. For reasons known only to the primordial serpent, Framt will actually hand over 1,000 souls in exchange for it. The pendant is the ultimate trap for new players. When you look at the starting gifts, it stands out. If you do not know much about the game, you naturally assume this item hides a massive secret. Dark Souls is famous for hiding its mechanics, so picking a mysterious piece of jewelry seems like a smart, long-term investment. The real joke is that the game tells you the truth from the very beginning. The item description literally reads, "A simple pendant with no effect." But the player base, they did not really believe it. This paranoia was completely intentional and was fueled directly by the game's director, Hidetaka Miyazaki. During an early interview, he claimed that he would personally choose either the pendant or nothing as his starting gift. That single comment sent the entire community into a frenzy. Players spent months testing wild theories, convinced that they were about to uncover a hidden truth. People tried using it in boss fights, dropping it in specific locations, and equipping it during different world states. Oh boy. Later, Miyazaki finally admitted, the pendant truly has no significant purpose at all. Mechanically, you can trade it to Snuggly the Crow for a souvenir of reprisal, or feed it to Frant for another 1,000 souls. You can also find it later in the game, either as a random forest hunter reward or sitting on the undead parish altar if Petrus kills Rhea. But as a legendary key to unlock the game's deepest lore, it is completely useless. It only exists to mess with the community. That's it, nothing more. Beyond the prank itself, the item description actually paints a quiet, sad picture. It notes that pleasant memories are crucial to surviving an arduous journey. In a setting as miserable and decaying as Lordran, holding onto a trinket just for the sake of emotional comfort is actually very humane. Another pretty strange item is the egg Vermifuge. Visually, it closely resembles a red-colored chestnut that has been entirely overtaken by fungus. While in the whole of my first playthrough, I had no idea what this item actually does. Later on, I figured out that it is tied to another pretty strange encounter in the game. If a player is attacked and grabbed by an egg-burdened enemy, a hidden timer begins. After a brief incubation period, the player character undergoes a forced physical mutation. Their head is permanently replaced by a massive pulsating parasitic egg. This condition introduces severe mechanical penalties. The mutation completely occupies the head equipment slot, preventing the use of any helmet. Furthermore, the parasite actively feeds on the player, absorbing exactly half of all souls acquired during the journey. The egg Vermifuge serves as the only medicine to this effect. The official text explains that the egg bearers willingly chose to serve the flame of chaos. Because the parasite is considered a sacred symbol of their selfless devotion, consuming these chestnuts is strictly forbidden in their order. Even though the egg cult treats this medicine as strictly forbidden, it is surprisingly easy to find around them. Take Engi, the heavily infected guy blocking the path to the Chaos Covenant. He is covered in eggs himself, yet he hoards a massive stash of exactly the same item that cures it. If you show up infected, he will hand you one for free out of pity. But right after that, he turns it into a business deal, selling them to you for 1,000 souls per piece. Keeping up with the running joke of the game, this item has one last use. You can take this nasty chestnut all the way back to the Undead Asylum and drop it in Snuggly the Crow's nest. The bird will gladly accept it and gives you a dragon scale in return. Next on the list is the Souvenir of Reprisal. And honestly, this one is just straight up gross. You are literally carrying around a shrunken, blood-drained ear. The Blades of the Dark Moon basically act as the protectors of the gods. If you break the rules and rack up sin, they invade your world to back you up. When they win, they chop off your ear to keep as a souvenir. The lore description mentions that they just leave your earless corpse rotting on the ground, as a warning to everyone else pretty much. It is supposed to inspire fear and respect for the gods, but let us be real, it just makes the supposedly righteous holy knights of Lordran look like serial killers. All of this is apparently the doing of Dark Sun Gwendolyn, who clearly has some very questionable hobbies. In terms of actually using them, you hand these crusty ears over to Gwendolyn to rank up in the Covenant. If you are playing online, you just spam the blue eye orb, hunt down players who have been acting up pretty much, and collect your gruesome prize. But if you are stuck offline, you are in for a truly miserable time. You have to farm the creepy crow demons over in the Painted World, and the drop rates are absolutely garbage. You do get one guaranteed ear for invading Lautrec in Anor Londo, and finally putting an end to his nonsense, which always feels fantastic. So, looking at the dried finger, you might be wondering what this gross wrinkly thing actually does. First off, it does not actually let you invade other people. Instead, it invites them to invade you. Here's how the mechanics work. Normally, after someone invades your world and the fight ends, the game gives you about a 10-minute cooldown break. During that time, nobody else can jump into your game, whether you won or lost the match. But if you use the dried finger, it instantly wipes that timer to 0. It is basically a come at me button for players who want non-stop PvP. You can spam it as many times as you want without it breaking. The lore behind it is pretty creepy. The item description points out that the finger has way too many knuckles to be human, and even though it is shriveled up, it is somehow still warm. The running theory is that it was chopped off an undead dragon. Those massive creatures died ages ago, but are magically kept alive, which perfectly explains why a severed bony finger would still have some body heat. Usually, rings give you some kind of nice bonus. You put one on to get more health, carry heavier weapons, or cast stronger spells. The Calamity Ring looks at all those helpful stats and throws them straight into the garbage. Its only function is to literally double the damage you take. The lore description flat out admits that the ring is a complete disaster. It is enchanted by the glowing orange eye of Black Dragon Calamity, a creature so dangerous that even the gods wanted absolutely nothing to do with him. The ring basically mimics the horrible effects of his grab attack, which is doubling the damage you take. The game itself even tells you it is a useless piece of junk befitting no finger and that it should have stayed hidden forever. The funniest part about this item is how much effort it takes to ruin your own life. Dark Souls loves tricking you with sneaky curses, but there is no trap here. You have to willingly travel to a land from the past and defeat Calamity. So why do people actually use it? It mostly exists as an item for challenge runners and hardcore veterans. If you want to force yourself to get better at dodging, constantly risking instant death is a very fast way to learn it. If you invade someone and they see you have the Calamity penalty active, they have to figure out if you are completely clueless or a terrifying veteran. Just to keep in mind, it only doubles damage from actual enemy attacks. It will not make falling off a cliff or using the power within pyromancy hurt any worse than usual. The binoculars absolutely make no sense in the world of Lordran. It takes place in a medieval setting. Even in history, we know that telescopes, which require immense technical skill in optics, only came about during the 17th century. Similarly, binoculars are not so different. The game tries to explain away this massive technological leap by claiming some famous craftsman in Astora built them. The description also throws in a very questionable note saying, "Their value depends greatly on their imagination of their owner." Make of that what you will. Picking these as your starting gift is basically a complete scam. First of all, choosing a starting gift like the Master Key and Divine Blessing is a way better way to start. And secondly, you can literally walk right into a graveyard at Firelink Shrine the second you arrive and loot a free pair of a corpse. In terms of actual gameplay, they are almost entirely pointless. They let you zoom in and look at the scenery, but literally any standard bow in the game does the exact same thing. Next on the list is the Alluring Skull. The mechanics behind this item are genuinely hilarious. You're essentially taking a shattered human skull packed with lingering soul energy and chucking it across the room. According to the lore, the hollows of Lordran are so completely starved for life that they simply cannot resist the bait. The moment it shatters, they will completely forget that they are in a fight and chase after the broken skull like a dog sprinting after a raw piece of meat. The most famous use for this item is dealing with the heavily armored Fangboar in the Undead Parish. You can stand completely out of reach on a stone overpass and toss a skull directly in a nearby roaring fire. The giant metal-plated boar will immediately abandon all survival instincts, sprint headfirst into the flames to investigate, and slowly roast itself to death while you watch safely from above. If you want to constantly exploit this massive lapse in logic, the skulls are extremely easy to hold. You can pick up a few free ones right above that fang boar, or just buy them in bulk. The undead female merchant down in the lower undead burg sells them for a measly 500 souls, and Marvelous Chester will gladly sell you some later in the Royal Wood. And finally, we move on to our last item, the Homeward Bone. At first glance, the Homeward Bone looks pretty standard. It simply returns you to the last bonfire you rested at. However, the real oddity here is being a bone. In any other fantasy setting, the item that teleports you back to your hub would be a scroll, a portal, or a magic spell. But here, the item is a bone. The item description explicitly states it is a bone of an undead. Somehow, this shattered fragment retains a supernatural connection to a pile of burning ash. It implies that every undead is permanently linked to the bonfire system, even long after their physical death. The undead in this universe are cursed beings. They have no family, no future, and certainly no real home. Yet the item is specifically designated as Homeward. It confirms that the closest thing an undead has to true home is a temporary rest beside a fire. Every single Homeward Bone in your inventory represents the remains of another individual. Thousands of undead attempted to fulfill their destiny and completely failed. What is left of their existence is now just a consumable tool. So, all these items are undeniably weird, but do you know what is actually even weirder than carrying around dung pies and bones of dead strangers? The map itself. There are specific spots scattered around Dark Souls that are so completely odd and out of place that you have probably run past them without ever noticing. This definitely needs to be covered, so step back into the world of Lordran as we explore some pretty weird spots.